All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Envision lecture series. My name is Jonathan Haig, and I'm grateful you're joining us for today's conversation, Proximity Builds Better. Today's discussion centers around a simple but powerful idea. The strongest solutions often come not from a distance, but from deep understanding of the people a product or service is meant to help. So, grounded in the principles of human-centered design, this conversation explores how lived experience, empathy, and close connection to an audience can lead to smarter innovation and better outcomes in social care. We're excited to hear from founders who didn't just build for people, they built alongside them. Their work reflects what can happen when innovators stay close enough to truly listen, learn, and respond. And we're grateful for the support of our title sponsor, Anthem, whose commitment to innovation in social care helps make conversations like this possible. I'd like to invite my friend, my former colleague, my always collaborator, Dustin Ziegler from Anthem, to share a few words as we get started.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Good to be back. Appreciate it. And just want to welcome everybody and thank everybody for your time. Anthem's really excited for this. This is, I think, an example of what the lecture series are about, are taking these unique angles to health and wellness and health outcomes of the communities that we serve and the vulnerable populations that we serve. So I love the concept of proximity, and we're going to jump into that. And when you think about proximity, I think about not just access to a grocery store or a pharmacy, but even social proximity, things that matter to me, proximity. All of these things affect and influence health outcomes. And that's Anthem's approach to everything that we do too, is that whole health approach. So excited about it. And I think another important piece that I'm really interested in diving into is when we think about all this, that human-centered design piece. If we're going to be solving problems for folks, let's be sure that those folks that we're solving problems for are at the table with us. So give it back to you, Jonathan.
Dustin, thank you. And I don't know, I don't think I mentioned here at the start, but we have Dustin to thank for really getting the Envision lecture series started here at CICOA several years ago. So, Dustin, always appreciate your support. So, thank you for being here. We're also grateful for our partner sponsor, CareForth. Their work supporting caregivers and families aligns deeply with today's conversation around proximity and lived experience. I'd like to invite Lisa Reed from CareForth to introduce herself and CareForth, and then help welcome today's panelist.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Reed. I'm the Director of Sales and Community Partnerships here in Indiana with CareForth. CareForth is the leading provider of caregiver support across the nation. Nationally, there are 53 million plus informal caregivers providing care annually. In Indiana alone, there are more than 790,000 informal caregivers providing that care annually. And that's why CareForth worked with the state of Indiana to develop and deliver a caregiver support program that supports a caregiver holistically, clinically, mentally, and financially. We launched that program here in Indiana, which is referred to as structured family caregiving, in 2013. And we have been delivering that program in every single county across the state ever since. CareForth's mission is to ensure that individuals can age in place at home where they want to be and can choose who is providing their care. CareForth provides the coaching, mentoring, tools, and resources needed to accomplish just that. Our goal is to ensure that caregivers never feel as if they are alone. All right, now on to introductions. Can you all hear me well?
Lisa, we may need you to turn your video off to be a little bit more clear?
I'm good.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Hopefully it's good. All right, so we have Alec Glassman, who is the founder and CEO of Silver Shield, where they work to protect older adults and families from scams and fraud. He built the company through close real-world learning in senior living communities and with the professionals who support them. Next, we have Tiffany Vivo. Tiffany is co-founder and CEO of TheraProve, where they work to help families find pediatric therapy with greater confidence. Inspired by her own family's experience, she is building a more responsive, family-centered way to connect children with care. And then we have our Jonathan Haig. Jonathan is Vice President of Innovation at CICOA Aging and In-Home Solutions, where he walks alongside colleagues, providing exciting imagination and helping develop ways to express sparks of inspiration. He works with subject matter experts to co-create advantaged innovation. Welcome.
Lisa, thank you. And thank you to CareForth so much for their sponsorship of making today's live webinar and the recording available to folks. So thank you again for your support. We're going to go ahead and get started with our fireside chat here. I'm super excited, and we're going to go through probably 5 or 6 questions and also kind of just see where there might be some areas that we want to dive deeper into. So to get us started, I'd really love Alec and Tiffany for you to both expand on your personal introduction. I think folks always love hearing kind of how did you get here, but we'd also love to know more about your company and what your products, your services, what they are, and how they are positively impacting folks' lives. So, Alec, I'll start with you on that.
Cool. Thanks, Jonathan. And great to see everyone. All right, I'll try to be brief with all of it. Though Jonathan, you know that could be a challenge for me. So I like started my career in structured finance, and that was cool, but I just didn't feel like I was making the world better. And so I left that job and I kind of went on this path of figuring out how I could do well while doing good. And that led me to some more education, led me to working at a different startup, and eventually starting Silver Shield. And so when I came across this world of financial fraud and abuse of older adults, um, the first thing I did was like, okay, well, how am I going to learn about this and actually address it? Like, it's clearly a huge problem, but how do you actually go about solving it? And so I went and I lived with my folks in a retirement community for 2 months. And I learned very quickly that all of my North Stars were south. Like all of the ways that I had thought about approaching and solving this problem were completely wrong. And so with that knowledge, I basically threw out everything that I had sort of had before, built this new prototype, and then I went on tour across the country to all these conferences talking to professionals in the space, older adults themselves, just learning and iterating and building. And so that was this whole big journey that culminated in me living in a senior living community in rural Ohio for 2 weeks. Um, Learned a lot about life, got more product learnings, product validation, and then that led us to be able to start scaling. And so after that, we ended up launching with New York State. So they're our biggest customer, the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, a couple of counties in Pennsylvania. And now we're having some really interesting conversations with other sorts of players as well, both in government and like financial institutions. And none of what we do would have been possible and continues to not be possible without this whole idea of proximity and human-centered design. So like all of our greatest early learnings that allowed us to make the next jump came from the retirement community, and the next piece came from working with professionals, and then the next piece came from living in the senior living community, and then after that, it was driving around New York State all of March, like over 3,000 miles to all of these offices for the aging, talking to people and listening and learning, and like every single step of the way, we just have found a way to incorporate very, very closely the people we're trying to help, and that has shaped what we're building. And I realized we didn't talk product at all. So to be super brief on that, actually, this time, So we make it easy for people to spot and stop scams and fraud. Starting with older adults because they're hit the hardest, but ultimately this is an everyone problem, and so we see this as being a chance to help everybody. Um, and what's cool and sort of like the key kernel that has led to this whole business is that um, it's not shocking, but but no one realizes this. Like people are just people. People care about independence and purpose, and there's so much negativity shrouding scams and fraud. Like we're trying to just get rid of all that. We want to turn a negative into a positive. We want to find a way that we can empower people to be excited about fighting scams and fraud, and use that as a way to really combat this challenge. And so we don't like fear monger. We don't try and scare people or anything like that. We're all about empowerment. We're all about empowering people to be able to help themselves. And that all came through learning and this close proximity. I'll turn it over to Tiffany.
Yeah, and if as Tiffany comes off mute here, I do want to say I met Alec in we met in December, I think, at a conference, and um, at those conferences, it's a lot of small talk and networking. I'm not great at that, if you know me, but Alec had this sincere curiosity first when I observed him from a distance, like he just the intensity in which he was having conversations with folks and picking up bits and pieces, like just the sincere curiosity. And then when I had the chance to connect, it wasn't small talk, it was meaningful. And I think as we continue this conversation about proximity building better, there's this element of curiosity and intentionality and going beyond just what we see at the surface and really getting to know people. And even in his networking, if you want to call it that, that was evident. So just wanted to call that out, Alex. Tiffany, would love to hear about your background and TheraProve.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so grateful to be here, Jonathan. Thanks so much for bringing me in this space to share about TheraProve, which I'd like to start with. We've built TheraProve to be an ecosystem to connect providers and first of all, families and the care teams that support those individuals. And we've done it to improve communication and patient outcomes, most importantly, because early intervention matters. And not only that, but skills and needs need to be matched up. And a lot of times that's an afterthought. And so we put a high focus on that. And the real problem in this space, it comes down to, and it wasn't so obvious at first, but we put it on the families to find the providers. And they're challenged with a lot up front. First of all, getting down all the acronyms that's in this space, it's a lot. And I'm learning new ones every day. And every sector has its plethora of acronyms, but we've switched the script to put it on the providers to reach out to the family so they can fill their caseloads and be more mindful of like making that connection because they have an idea of like what the needs are for the child. And the reason why we started TheraProve is because we talk about proximity. This is something I am living with my daughter. And so she was born with Down syndrome, and even having a husband who's a physician, having that person by my side who's a medical professional did not help us navigate the convoluted process of getting connected to care. And so my background is HR and tech. So I love people and technology. And so this ended up being a great fit for me when I saw the problem, and I had a number of engineers that were willing to help out to get us going.
If I can call out very similarly to Alec, Tiffany, from a CICOA perspective, we share a geography here in central Indiana. And so as some of our colleagues and my colleagues were out and about, had the opportunity to meet Tiffany, and we ended up having a meeting or two. And again, just the sincerity towards the the challenge that was being faced. And I think a lot of times we see entrepreneurs kind of building from a distance. I hope what you begin to hear today and we highlight is that this proximity does have an advantage in building both resilient products and services, but also getting to better outcomes more quickly. But that was very evident in our initial conversations with Tiffany. So just as a reminder, as you have questions, I know Cassie put it in the chat, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. We'll allow for time at the end of the webinar to address a few of those, and just want to remind you to put those in the chat. Let's kind of get to the second part here, and Alec, I'll start with you on this one because you started to highlight some of this, but one of the themes of today's conversation is that proximity creates clarity. Often the best innovations emerge because someone experienced a challenge up close. Tiffany just highlighted that. So can you share a bit more in depth from what you did in your introduction on what inspired you to create your solution? And really what was like, and I think you highlighted this, what illustrated the problem in a big way for you on that? So I'll start with you, Alec.
Thank you. I feel like I probably touched on the first part before,
Yeah.
so just to like reiterate it pretty quickly, it was basically just this desire to try. Just think you can build great companies that make society better. And so when I went searching for a way to do that, I came across this problem that I realized was not being nearly talked about enough. We're starting to hear about it more, but which is this problem of financial fraud and abuse of older adults. Which when I started, the estimate was that it was like $60 billion stolen from older adults in 2023. And then this year you hear it's 80 billion, and then you hear it's higher, and it's crazy. But it's so interesting. I mean, I think my biggest aha was probably this combination of living with my folks in a retirement community and then going to the American Society on Aging's annual conference and doing this day-long anti-ageism training. Because it really just made it clear for me, like helped me like put a word to the disconnect, because that was the disconnect, which is like you think about scams and fraud and everyone is so ageist about it. They're like, make babysitting tools, make things to keep people out of trouble, kind of like do things to like take away from folks, and that's how you protect them. Um, Everyone's like, oh, go sell to the kids, like just make them make their parents do it, whatever. It's very easy to say that stuff. Then you go and talk to people and you listen and you're like, no, 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 no. Like you're like, think about this for yourself. People want to be independent, they want purpose, they want to be doing things to preserve their independence, not have it taken away. So it's our job to help make it easy for people to be independent. And in this case, it's independently handling these challenging situations, just scams and fraud. And you find out that like because of the negativity associated with scams and fraud in these horrible moments where these things are just starting, people don't want to talk and ask for help. The last thing they want to do is ask their kids for help. And so they'll start to try and deal with it themselves. And that's when they get sucked into a scam. And when you're sucked into a scam, you can't get pulled out of it. And so again, it's just this whole notion of like, well, wait a second, if we just empower that person to have a trusted way of dealing with it themselves in that moment, that's actually really, really powerful. So that set of learnings, like hearing people's story and hearing them talk about it and hearing the sort of pushback to some of the babysitting tools and whatnot, really listening to that, coupled with learning about ageism and learning about the way that we as a country mistreat older adults, that made it so clear for me that we had to just be the opposite. Like, did you guys know that like baby talk, like talking to a baby and like elder speak? They did some study and it's something like 70 or 80% of the speech patterns are the same between how we talk to babies and how people talk to older adults. That's insane. Like these are people that have lived really full lives, done incredible things, and at some point we just decide that we have to start treating them as children. That's crazy. So it was really that pairing for me of learnings together that made it so evidently clear of we need to go in this direction of pure empowerment.
I appreciate that, and we'll go a little deeper into that in the next question. But those are really important highlights, and yeah, we'll dig into that more in the next question. Tiffany, can you kind of explore that? And again, you did this really well in your introduction. Um, but can you know, talk a little bit about like it's one thing to identify like, oh my gosh, this is the experience that we're going through, and then like, I've got to solve this, right? Like, can you talk a little bit about that journey there for you and your
Yeah.
family?
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, it did start with the birth of my daughter. So 6 years ago, when she was born with Down syndrome, we needed early intervention starting at age 3 months. And from there, we were receiving occupational therapy and physical therapy. It wasn't until, and we were having really great progress with our daughter, which was, it's like, wow, and at first we were very reluctant. We're like, we're smart people, we can figure this out. But as soon as we let the experts come in and they started doing their magic, it was amazing, the milestones that we were getting and all the things we learned. And but at age 15 months is when we needed speech therapy. Avenel was nonverbal. And so she did know sign language. She knew over 300 signs, which is amazing. And I encourage all young people, all kids to learn sign language and the people that support them, because it's just it's really great. The fact that she could communicate with us at such an early age. But I was nervous that she wouldn't be able to actually talk to us and say, Mom. I was really nervous for that. So we did receive a speech therapist through our early intervention program, First Steps. And it took us 2 months to receive services. And once the therapist arrived, she was a very nice lady. She was a good speech therapist, but she didn't know sign language. Unfortunately, she was unable to meet my daughter where she was, like her needs. And 6 months went by with no progress. And when your child has delays, the last thing you want is more delays. And so we set out, we tried to find a different therapist. Unfortunately, we only had one to choose in our cluster with First Step, so we had to seek outside therapy. Finally, we found a speech therapist who was proficient in ASL. Avenel's language took off, and so did TheraProve. That was the reason for all of this, is that I had to shake people down to find somebody who was specialized for my daughter. But again, the magic of therapy when you find the right care provider. So, and then I started hearing that this was I started recognizing pattern, like, oh, this is a similar story. And I'm hearing it again when I share, like, oh my goodness, hallelujah, we finally found somebody. And you hear families saying, I wished I could find somebody, but we're still without services. And my heart was breaking to know that a child needs, intervention, and they're waiting because they can't find somebody. There's a wait list. I mean, there's all the reasons. And so I just knew we had to do something about it.
Tiffany, yes, thank you for that. I want to stick with you and keep building on this. When was TheraProve officially launched?
So it was actually September 2022.
Okay.
And I would say it was about just a few months after that experience with my daughter.
Yeah.
Because I was like amazed at that, the progress after finding a specialized therapist. I was just, and because she knew sign language, my daughter was talking all along. And I want to share that with anybody who's listening, maybe that's, with someone who's nonverbal. She was actually speaking the words. She understood it because she has a trained ear, and she was also signing. But yeah, so September 2022 is when we finally launched. So we're close to 4 years old now.
And so when you think about, what TheraProve looked like 4 years ago, and greatly inspired by your personal journey, and now you've met folks all across these last 4 years, can you think of times that you're able to share where it's like, oh, that lived experience has changed our roadmap a little bit, right? Has changed how we've thought about our product. Could you give a couple examples of times where that's happened?
Oh, sure. In fact, I think Alec was kind of alluding to this too, where you're kind of like stop in your tracks, right? And for me, I felt like I was driving full speed down the road and something happened and all of a sudden I just stopped because I was going in the wrong direction. For us, we spent resources and a lot of time building a mobile app that was essentially a glorified directory. So you could go find your therapist and make a choice. And one of my friends who's a physician, he needed a music therapist for his child. And I said, oh, I've got 25 in your area. Why don't you go get on the app and go find one? And a few days later, I bumped into him and I said, hey, I noticed you created an account, because I'm on AWS. And I said, why didn't you select a therapist? There's so many there for you to choose. He's like, I didn't know who to pick. He's a physician. And for him, but he's not an expert in music therapy and what makes a good music therapist for his child. And that's when it really occurred to me that, oh, we can't put it on the families to make the choice. We have to flip the script and we have to allow the providers to reach out to the families. First of all, they know their availability, which is changing constantly every day, in fact. And then secondly, they know their insurance, which is so complicated, right? Insurance in general. And they know their skills so they see a child that needs somebody who's proficient in ASL or is familiar with AAC devices, right? Those tablets you can communicate. And it's like, oh, I'm an expert in this. I want to help that child. So we flip the script so we can allow those providers to reach out to the families, because you wouldn't want to reach out to a provider if they have a year-long wait list when there's somebody across the street that can help you. And so let that person across the street that has open availability that can help you reach out to you, because sometimes they're hard to see if they don't have a ton of money to do advertising and paid ads. Maybe they're not marketing experts because they're practitioners first, and that's okay. But we still need to help those individuals find those families. And so that was one reason. The other, we found a stat: 12% of the U.S. is healthcare literate. I would not put myself in that category. And so when you think about healthcare literacy, you can't put it on the family to make the choice and pick the provider. There's a lot of educating that goes into that. And so like how the state programs work now, they'll give you a pick list and you pick a provider. And you don't get to know exactly which provider gets to help you. You're picking out an organization. And everybody's trying their best, but at the end of the day, it becomes an afterthought because it is a complicated process. It's not just vetting the child. You have to vet the family too to ensure that we're going to be able to provide the services. So for us, we had to throw away that mobile app, which was painful. But it was like also getting rid of a 5,000-pound gorilla because it wasn't the right way. And so we are essentially an open table for providers, allowing them to find the families and to reduce the redundancy of paperwork. I can't tell you how many times I've filled out these intake forms that are super redundant, that nobody looks at. And again, sometimes you have to fill those out just to find out if there's availability.
Tiffany, I want to highlight, it's painful to throw away something that especially when you're going through lived experience, right? I've got the solution, I know what the problem is, and rightfully, I will always say creatively responding to those challenges and opportunities is the right response, right? Go and create, go and respond to that. That's what I tell community-based organizations all the time. Have a bias towards acting, right? And creating on that. But I think what you've highlighted here is a very important part of the journey, that whether you're a builder or in healthcare or things like that, we have to be open to solutions evolving as we learn, as we build with folks, right? And so I think it's important to call out for the folks that are listening. It's like sometimes that means throwing away the thing that you work so hard on, right? And I think to reframe it, because that can be a very hard thing as a creator to say, oh, that's not the thing, and it's being put in the proverbial trash, right? But it's like to reframe that as no, that was an essential stepping stone in this, right? It was essential for us to put that out into people's hands to understand what worked and what didn't work in that. And I think that's a really core concept of what it means to build in proximity. I think that's what builds resilience in our companies, right? So, Alec,
Jonathan,
I'll
I would
turn it
add
over.
to that
Oh yeah.
actually. So like Tiffany, something that you said in your story that really stood out to me, that Jonathan, you were talking about it now, but I would actually shift it a little bit, is like I think that when you're building a company, what you're doing is you're just like unlocking the next problem. So like you solve one thing and then that allows you to learn the next problem and it's usually harder. And then you do that and then that allows you to learn the next problem and it's usually harder. And so like on one hand, it feels a little bit like, you're pushing the boulder up the hill, right? But on the other hand, it's kind of amazing. So like Tiffany, you solved the first hard thing, which was like even getting a two-sided market. Like that's hard. And you couldn't have done the second thing until you did the first. So you do the
Mhm.
first, then you're like, wait a second, new problem. It's not just gathering the right resources. It's like how do you match them and pair them effectively and efficiently and so it's better outcomes for everyone. And then you do that and you're like, wait a second, that's cool. This healthcare form issue is so painful and that is so brutal. Like, how do we solve that? And so, like, what I hear in your story is just like a willingness to listen for what the next problem is and knowing and being comfortable that there's always going to be another problem. Like, always. That's okay. Doesn't invalidate your former solution. It just means that you have to figure out the next solution. So I think that's so
Mhm.
cool how you've kind of iterated your way through, like earn the feedback.
Well, Alec, I want you to keep going on that. What I was going to prompt you with was, I think when you think about scams and how to build solutions in this space, I think what was interesting, I don't think maybe I said this out loud to you, but I had this thought of like, oh, this seems like this is a really interesting way to handle it. But there was well, I don't have the right word for it, but this authenticity that you're going directly to the challenge. And you had alluded to this in your previous answer about the baby talk, about independence in this. So I'm wondering if one, you could talk a little bit specifically, because I think most listeners, most of the folks that signed up for this webinar do work in places that deal with folks from that independence perspective. But I think your product really demonstrates at its core of how to give agency to folks on that. And so that's the first thing that I want you to do. But I would also love for you to kind of lean into how has your roadmap changed based upon what you've heard? So that same question to Tiffany. So
Yeah,
what have been some of those iterations as well? So I'm sorry, I'm giving you a two-parter, but I think you can handle it.
all good. I'll do my best. So for the first part, like if you asked me what we sold, I would tell you we sell independence.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's like at our core, and it's really important. I'm a huge jobs to be done nerd. I don't know if people on this call are familiar with the jobs to be done construct, but it's kind of this whole notion of like when people buy a product, they're not buying the product, they're buying it for the job that the product is accomplishing. You're almost hiring the product. So there's one way of viewing it is like you don't buy a hammer because you want a hammer. You hire a hammer to like put a nail in a wall, or like you
Mhm.
hire a hammer to like put up a picture. And when you think about things like that, it usually changes the way that you think about what you have to build. And so, for example, for us, if we know that the jobs to be done of older adults are independence and purpose, well, that's going to change our roadmap a lot and change the things that we're focusing on, right? And so we're going to be all about making it as easy as possible to get accessible help when you need it. So we don't have an app. You don't have to learn anything to use us. We really keyed on this. Was a quote when I was living in the senior living community. This woman said, "I just want a buffer I can go to before I go to my son." So it's like, okay, how can we be that buffer for people? And how can we give that to people? And so that's why you just text us or you email us or you chat with us online, because it's the same thing people are doing today that they dread doing. But now we just give them agency and say, yeah, you just text us. Like, we're here. Um, and then what's fun is you're like, well, okay, well, how do you get purpose in this? And it's like, well, people like hate scammers. It's actually funny. There's like this phrase that's been coined now from some of our partners, duck the scammers, which is, I thought it meant like duck. Apparently they had a double entendre when they said it. But this is a PG fireside chat, so we'll skip that. But like people want to like get back at these scammers, and so we're like, well, what can we do? And we're like, well, I don't know. Like right now, reporting to the FBI and the FTC matters, but it's a total pain in the neck. So we're like, great, let's automate that. And then we said, you know what? People want to be heroes. Like, how do we do that? And we said, well, what if we could make it so they could easily share and warn their communities? Like, what if you made it so that older adults were the ones warning their families about this and not the other way around? How cool would that be? So I think like all of those like micro decisions are a direct result of having this very clear idea of the job to be done, of the people that we're trying to help, and building in that vein. So I think that answers both questions. There's probably some more roadmappy stuff, but I think have to
No,
leave it at that.
I think that's really incredible, and I want to highlight from both out of both of these stories, from both Tiffany and Alec, there is this kind of like, let's turn this on its head, right? Like uh uh let's think about this not just differently, but let's think about this from um a very human-centered way, right? And I think again, that's what this fireside chat is meant to illuminate, that when you build in proximity, those assumptions that may have been held at the start, being open to flipping those on their head, again, unlocks resilience further down the road for Silver Shield to to build heroes, right? To say like that's uh that is a big deal for your users to keep coming back and coming back to it. And Tiffany, for folks to, I think about the physician story that you said, to actually solve for the job to be done, right? Like the physician didn't know how to choose, so to shift to actually put that in there, it's absolutely incredible. So I just want to applaud both of you
Well, Tiffany,
for
for
that.
yours too, it's so interesting because when you say it, it's like, duh, that makes so much sense. But it's like, if you need help, you're like, you don't want your task to be like searching to find the perfect person. You just want to be like, I need these five things really matter to me, and I have this insurance. And if you're a physician, like you actually would rather be getting paired off with people that are going to be good patience for you. So like you kind of gave the right people the right responsibilities. And it's a little bit weird now that you're like, why isn't everything like this? And I could see some moral hazard for like why there needs to be, maybe to go both ways. But like that's super cool. You kind of just like fixed it.
Yes, that's Tiffany, did you have something to say in response to that?
We got a long way to go, but we feel better. We're on the right track now. But yeah, thanks, Alec.
That's great. All right, so I still want to ask this next question. I have this jotted down. You both have alluded to this uh, alluded to this in previous answers, but is there one thing, or I guess what has been the most surprising thing, whether it was from at the beginning or where you're at now? What was the thing that surprised you most? Like what thing challenged your assumptions about what you were solving for the most? So it could be how someone you were living with for those couple of for that period of time. Tiffany, the physician story is a great example of that. But I guess if you all thought about, was there one piece of feedback that came as a result of proximity that really surprised you or challenged you? And I'll let you decide who goes first on that.
I got something, but Tiffany, if you have something, you can go first.
You can go ahead, Alec. Thank you.
So I'm going to give a combo answer because on one hand, I think everything that I've been saying is like I'm a little bit repetitive, but it's because it's so important and it's been learning about that independence and purpose underpinning everything, and using that to determine like what our initial offerings should be. And by the way, like people use it, which is cool. Like we've been live in New York State for just over 3 months now, and I checked the stats just now before this call. Like we've got in about 750 messages in from New Yorkers. You saved $116,000 worth of scams like in 3 months. So people are like using it every day. But
Yeah.
I share that because you talk to people who have no proximity to this issue, or far less, and you just hear the same sort of like I'm almost gonna say tropes, which is a strong word, but you hear the same pushback on certain assumptions that you're making as a business. And for me, the most shocking thing is it's like like, when are people gonna start believing the insights? Like you take the time to it's just a fascinating thing. Some people you explain it and they're like you see it and they're like, "Oh my God, you're right. Like I've never thought about it this way." And other people are just haters. That's fine because you can be like, "No, it's cool. Like here's like it's working. It's fine, whatever." But that's always so crazy to me where I'm like, "You didn't do any work. You didn't spend any time with people. You didn't do the learning." And you can be a hater all you want, but like um the things that once you have that like lived experience, you have that forever.
Mm, mm, that's good.
Sorry,
Tiffany,
roundabout answer, Jonathan. I apologize.
oh, hey, here in Central Indiana, we love roundabout answers. We have lots of roundabouts. All right, sorry, that was my one dad joke for the time for it. Saved forever. All right, Tiffany.
Yeah, I love that. The sharing the insight, those aha moments, and they get it, Alec, and you're like, you get it. Hallelujah, let's do this. And then it's hard to change behavior. And and some will ask questions. Well, why do we do it this way? Why are we still using fax machine? Why do we still use it? I get more faxes from other organizations than I do myself. How is that? I get 10 times more faxes for other people than I do for TheraProve. I'm not supposed to see that PHI, but yet I am. Somebody's wrongly sending that information because fax is so archaic, but it is the go-to standard still for large organizations. We were working with a large hospital system. I won't shame them over the podcast here, but they use fax for all the referrals. And so when I went, they were talking about putting an Epic button in for TheraProve. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is huge, right? To get a button in Epic. But the thing is, you can go through all that it takes, SOC 2 compliance and all the things to get that button in. But at the end of the day, you need a human to push the button. And they still have referral teams solely faxing. If you want to get a fax referral, it's going to be by fax. And so things like that happen enough. So there's a lot of surprises along the way, Jonathan, I got to say. This has been the most recent to see that what we think healthcare is, it's so secure. It's really not. It's really not at the end of the day. And I think more people need to question it, take a look under the hood, because there is a better way. HIPAA compliance seems like a very scary thing. It's just a lot of admin work. But there is a plethora of problems to solve. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Yeah.
But it's something that if you know, again, asking questions and really taking a look, and just know that your biggest struggle is going to be changing human behavior.
Well, by the way, Tiffany, I think one of my like favorite things to think about in that view too is like getting someone to use a product or use a service or something is instantiating a behavioral change. And think about how difficult it is in your own life to change your behavior, even when you know the outcome is better. So like that is the biggest thing is like it's not enough that it's better. It's not a big enough push. Like, I love to give the example of like the kid in college with laundry, where it's like they know if they did their laundry every Sunday at the same time, their life would be better, but they're gonna wait till they're on their last pair of underwear and then scramble to do it, and like it's gonna be a horrible experience. Um, and that's like a silly example, but it's not enough just to know something's better. It needs to be kind of like a stepwise function better, or it needs to just really not create any friction at all for that individual. And so like that's a really big challenge when you're creating something new and just like figuring out how do I fit into someone's workflow the best way, and how do I so clearly show that it's worth that little bit of action, because it's easier for someone to click an epic button than it is to send a fax, and yet that person is like, well, I've been sending faxes the last 20 years and it's always worked pretty well. It's like, why am I going to change what I'm doing? The fax thing is good. I kind of like it. I get a little break. I spin around. I fill up my coffee. I talk to my friends by the fax machine. Like maybe there's other things that are happening that you don't like are unclear that you're kind of battling against. So I just find that whole concept very interesting.
Yeah, we have a on that point out, we have a jobs to be done template, and that that part of the fax machine example, right? And the going and getting coffee and spending like water cooler talk, that's what you're fighting against. Like actually that was built in time where it was like this is my time to be social and things like that, which is an insanely frustrating thing for us who are trying to build, right? Uh, uh, Products and services and companies that do good, that make it easier for families and individuals to navigate where they're at in this journey. So, but it is one of my favorite things to do in that template to figure out, okay, what is this actually cutting out though for the user, right?
Yeah.
And then to go interview folks on that because it's and I do it for myself too, and it's hilarious. Like,
Well,
yeah,
that's like digital banking for older adults.
yeah.
Everyone is like, I don't understand. Why do you like going to the bank? Like, you could just cash that check from your phone. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, because the last 60 years, every Thursday you go to the bank and you say hi to everyone, and it's kind of social and it's kind of nice, and it's an excuse to get out of the house and, like, go do your thing. Maybe you do some other errands while you're there. It has nothing to do with the convenience of snapping a picture of a check instead. And if you don't take the time to understand, to your point, what you're competing against, you're not going to make good solutions or
That
use
that
solutions.
that's a the bank and the socialization aspect's a huge point that I know we talk about here at CICOA as well. All right, I want to spend some time on this last question. I want to leave it open, but here before I get to that question, I do want to remind folks, now would be a great time if you have comments or questions for anyone individually or for the group, please do drop those into the chat because we'll spend a few minutes here after we do this last question, talking through at least a couple of those. So, Alec and Tiffany, there are many people that are registered for this webinar who are trying to innovate within aging services, caregiving, healthcare, and social care. Um, I'd really be interested in what advice would you give to leaders, to entrepreneurs, to staff that are a part of health and social care organizations who want to build more responsive, human-centered solutions. So let me ask that first part. What would that advice be for folks that are thinking, "Ooh, I kind of want to go on this journey." So what would be your advice? Tiffany, I'd love to start with you on that.
This, thinking back at a lot of mistakes I've made along the way, keeping it simple is very hard.
Mm.
Building for what others need, rather your own needs, hard. And having a lot of conversations. People run to this space and they want to be maybe a thought leader, but I think you have to be a thought listener first and listening. And if you want to build something, I would say interview no less than 100 people. Now, everybody by 50, by 40, you're going to say, "Oh my goodness, there is a clear pattern of a problem here that can be solved with this." Because otherwise, if you do a lot of one-offs, you're going to get the Homer Simpson car where it has everything and only 2% of the product is being used, or the tool or whatever system you're creating to solve the problem. And so lots of research, A/B testing if you have to. I would encourage anybody who's going to build something, again, whether it's a system or technology, is to keep it simple and talk to a lot of people.
Oh, Tiffany, I love that advice. And I'm going to speak to the social care workers in the audience and who will be listening to this. When I speak to groups, I'm often talking about or trying to encourage people around this point, right? Your hundreds of interviews are essential, right? But and I think this is also true. That can be a barrier to going out and doing this work, right? Like I legitimately want to acknowledge that. But for the social care workers in the room, I want to encourage them that their proximity to the community and to the people that they serve, that those hundreds exist around them, right? And it's less about finding those people because you already have them. So when I speak, I talk about advantaged innovation. And I often say social care organizations, community-based organizations have an advantage when it comes to proximity. And it's on that point exactly. You have the people around you as a CBO. It's what you called out though. Go and talk to them. Go and take a prototype. Go and do discovery, right? Go listen, right? Have your assumptions challenged, and then when you start making that prototype, share that prototype with them, right? It's a big deal. And the folks in this room certainly do have that advantage. So thank you, Tiffany, on that. Alec, what do you think on that?
That was really great advice. I would add to that advice and say that um, the second you start working on something like innovative or new, um, one thing that you'll get a lot of are like a lot of opinions from a lot of people. Um, and no one else is in your shoes. No one else has the full context of what you're building or your business besides you. Like you know the most. And so it's your job as the leader to take in all that information as data points and understand what to take action on and what to maybe not take action on and what to pause, be like, come back to. So there's this whole like distillation process because you're going to do these interviews, you're going to learn a ton. You're also going to talk to lots of people and they're just going to be like, oh, you know what you should do? Oh my God, have you thought of this? Have you? And like, by the way, if you're really into this, you like dream about this stuff. So yeah, you probably have thought of it. Like you probably thought, and sometimes you probably haven't, but like just like listen, thank you, really polite, like ask for more. Oh, like why are you like why do you think that? Okay, cool. Like just gather more and more data points and then you distill and you make the decision. And I think if you do that really well, then you'll be marching in the right direction.
Okay, so I lied. There's one more question here. I don't make it a habit of lying, to be clear, but um, for the organizations, for the leaders of healthcare, social care, and other organizations that are here, um, can you reflect on both leading your companies, but also give some advice for how companies and organizations can stay genuinely connected to the people that they serve? Like what has been so, Tiffany being your company being 4 years old, Silver Shield, when was Silver Shield founded? Alec?
Oh man, started doing this about a year and a half ago.
Okay, so a year and a half ago. So yes, we have it like on that really early side. We know how to listen and stay connected. What's the advice for continuing to be in that habit of being in proximity to those you're building with? What advice would you give to the folks on this call?
I would say don't be arrogant.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Like, congrats, you learned all this stuff. It's so great. Guess what? There's infinity more to learn. And like, you're not, I mean, arrogance may be the wrong word, but it's like, don't assume that just because you've been doing this for a while, you actually know the right answers, because there's always another problem out there to learn about. And so like stay hungry for learning and curiosity, because there's always another thing to learn. It's probably a nicer way of putting it.
Oh no, that was great. Appreciate that, Tiffany.
Yeah, I say, I want to be right, like, but I'm wrong every day. Like I always want to be right, but I am literally wrong every day, especially in this space. And for staying connected, for me, that's part of scaling and growth. Because for us, we started out OT, PT, and speech, but then we realized we needed to be a comprehensive platform. So we needed to learn, and I learned about autism, which was very new. I didn't really know much about autism. And then when I found out about it, I'm like, why are more people talking about this? And then learning about the therapy that supports that ABA. And so there's so much more for us to learn. And I think that's naturally part of growth and sticking to your ethos. For us, we're connecting families to providers faster, and it doesn't like it keeps evolving. Like we've already thrown away a mobile app, and so now we have our platform that we're working on now. It looks a lot different, but at the end of the day, we have the same ethos. And I'm so, I get chills thinking about it because I do have this, this problem that existed for me personally and still exists for me, helps me stay connected to the community. And the byproduct is I find the best services for my daughter because of what I built. And so there's nothing more that, like as a mom, I'm so happy about that. And it pushes me to continue to, keep it real and stick true to what we're doing here.
Oh, I love that. Those those were like, I don't know if we pull this out on social media later, but both of your all's quotes on that of don't be arrogant and I want to be right, but I'm wrong every day on it's so good and so true. I don't say it the right way, but it is kind of I I do not want I'm never assumed to be the smartest person in the room. No one makes that assumption about me. But it's also a little bit of like, no, I never want to be that. I want to be able to be curious. I want to give other folks the opportunity to be curious as well. And I hope for those of you that are listening, you see that baked into the ethos of both TheraProve and Silver Shield. And I promise you, that makes a tremendous difference in the outcomes and the type of companies that they've built. So before we wrap up here, Alec and Tiffany, is there anything you really wanted to say that you had written down before that you didn't get the opportunity to say? Um, and if okay, we covered it with Tiffany. Alec, anything that you really wanted to get out there?
I would just add that if anyone is taking this entrepreneurial journey internally at a company, externally, like doing it yourself, um, it just like get a little better every day.
Mm,
Like it compounds. You won't see it for a while, but it compounds. and like it's definitely an emotional roller coaster, and just remind yourself to keep going like up and to the right. Like you're gonna have days where you feel like it's just not working, set, whatever, and then other days where you're feeling on top of the world. And on like the bad days, pull yourself up because you made a lot of progress. And on the good days, celebrate the win, but be like, all right, back to work. Got to keep moving. So just whatever day, stay positive.
This has been a great time. So as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to both of you for investing your time and energy to this group and the resource that this time is going to be for other organizations. I also want to say thank you to Anthem again and Careforth again for their sponsorship to make this event possible and this recording possible as well. We will send a recap of this time with contact information to Silver Shield and TheraProve. So I know that was one of the questions that was asked about getting further connected to the two of you and your companies so folks can learn more. We'll send a wrap-up email that will include both the recording of this as well as that contact information. And I don't know, maybe we'll throw in some of the great quotes that were said as well. But we would encourage those of you that have attended to share this with folks in your organization as you all are continuing to build new products and services and evolving products and services. So that's our commitment. I didn't see any additional questions, so we're not going to hold people to that. But again, thank you, Alec. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Anthem and Careforth. So with that, we'll end today's Envision, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Take care.